Are you good to go? It's live? All right, you're on.
Yep. So this has to be a quick presentation, unfortunately. I will just quickly brief myself. My name is Emre. I was a backend engineer for a couple of years. Then I switched to DevOps engineering. And also I'm doing software architecture in the last couple of years as well. And as you can see, my tech stack is a bit colorful because I work with small companies, like 3-people companies, and also I work with the companies who has more than thousands of engineers. So that's why I had the experience like a lot of different technologies, and it gives me a unique perspective about the tools and the procedures we usually use daily. And also I want to add a disclaimer that the rules I will tell you is my personal experience. Some expert may think different about that, or maybe my knowledge is not updated. So after this disclaimer, I want to just, for understand you, I will ask some quick questions. How many of you write an API in your life? It can be a school project, it can be a professional project, API. It does not have to be REST, it can be anything. Okay, 5, 6, okay, 8 people. So, what is the REST? The REST actually is a standardization way to connect one client and one server. And you don't have to go this way. You can just do completely different thing, and it will definitely work. But today we are trying to do this thing by the book. And as I told you before, you don't have to follow this protocol. You don't have to follow these standards. But if you follow that, your life will be pretty much easier. So we have some rules, and I will explain these rules one by one. So our four big rules is this has to be a representational. So this has to be represent an object. For example, when you ask some information from the backend, this has to be a database object or some kind of object which can representable in your system. How many of guys writing backend developers? Full stacks also can show hands. How many front ends? Only 2 front ends. Okay, so this is generally important for backends, but also important for front ends as well, because you guys have to ask your backend developers to respond in this way, because this will make both of your lives better. And what is the non-representational data? The non-representational data is like this. So as you can see here, I'm talking about an object and I'm giving some properties of the object, but here I'm just giving an HTML part related with this object. And this is not a good approach. And also this has to be stateless. So your backend has to be not remember anything. For example, let's imagine that we are creating a website for buying cars, or it can be an e-commerce website. So what you can do is, like, when a front end come and say that, hey, I want to add this to my cart, you can say that, yes, okay, I add it. But in this case, you have to know that which cards belong to which session. I'm not talking about users which already registered and log in with their accounts. I'm talking about, like, in a public web page, you as a backend, you have to know that which session is which users, or which card is related with which session. So instead of this, what you can do is you can just give a cart ID when somebody adds something to cart, and when they check out or when they log in, you can just ask them to give you this cart ID, and then you don't need to remember anything. And also another example, let's imagine that you have one website, and this website has a Korean version and English version. So your backend API has to respond with Korean or English content. So you don't want to, like, know that which user wants Korean version and which user wants English version. Just keep Like just ask the front-end developer, and front-end developer will say that, hey, I am accepting an English language, or I'm accepting this language. And also, your communication has to be used HTTP methods. So I will explain detailedly these ones later. And this has to be a cacheable. What I mean cacheable? So you guys learned the database earlier, and as you can understand, every query I send the database is cost me something. If you're running in the cloud, it costs you money. So what this means, if I have a web page listing the car advertisements, and if I have a millions of visits every minute, every days, this means that I have to just go to the database and ask the database, hey, please give me the recent information. But this is sometimes not a good idea because the car listings are not changed every minute. So what you can do is you can just add this tag and say that, hey, I want this information maximum 5 minutes aged. So if you use this, the backend will not check to the database. Backend will give you information coming from cache. So this means that if a user create an advertisement and put in a website, and if another user just came and get the information, and after 3 minutes, another user come and get the information, you are not sending a request to the database. You are just responding in a cache. But if it is like a messages or some really important resource that you cannot accept as a cache, you can just add a no cache, and then your API has to be response with no cache. So you have to go to the database and check if the data is valid or not. And also, one of the things is shared response models. This is actually not part of the original REST standards, but I think that this is important. So as you can see, we have two different objects. One of them is cars, and the other one is user. And the cars, we have different properties like a year, price, but the users, we have completely different stuff like name and email. So these two objects is completely different than each other. But as a programming perspective, they have a similar stuff. For example, you can list the cars and you can list the users. So for the both of them, you need to do a pagination. For both of them, if the request fails, you have to respond with an error message. So every time when you create a new object in the database, if you do a custom error schematics, or if you do a custom pagination, front-end developer has to implement these one by one. But if you do a wrapper and call this a shared response model, and if you respond your data or error messages, or if you manage your pagination in this protocol, then your front-end developer only do a one implementation, and then you can use all of the agent, all of the objects. And also one more thing is responding with correct HTTP response codes is really important because for many reasons. And one of them is it is not easy for all clients to parse the request. Imagine that you are using an IoT devices and it's not easy for them to parse this information. So just use the correct HTTP tag, and then the device will know that what is the response of the call without parsing the body. You can, of course, like send the error message in the body as well. And the client, of course, understand that, hey, if there is a no data and if there is an error object in my shared response model, this means that this request failed. But also, this is important because there are some network equipments which is listening your conversation, and also they have to have an idea that what's happening there. For example, this request has an error, so you respond as 400 BET request, and your application knows this, your client just does this. And also, if you have some kind of monitoring system, your load balancer or your network switch also knows that. So if you have a good network setup, you can also track this. and see that how many 500 errors or how many 400 errors you produce. And if there is a high like this, you can just trigger an alert, and you can just inform the infrastructure teams. And also, I think tomorrow there is a one session related with this topic. So keep in mind, like using correct HTTP response just gives you a lot of opportunity to play with these. And also one more thing is, this is, I think, also not one of the REST standards, but I think this is important, versioning your APIs. Just add a version tag in your path, and then you will use it later. For example, you're a backend engineer, and there's one engineer who writes the iOS application, and you have a version 1 users API, which this API responds you as some information related with the user. Let's say the email. But when you like work on it at the second version, you want to remove this email field. What happens if you remove the email field? iOS application will be broke, right? Because the iOS application, the code inside the iOS application, waiting you to respond in this way. So what you have to do is you have to publish your iOS application and your backend application at the same time. But we all know that if somebody publish an iOS application, we will not update in that second. So this application will broke unless you can create a version 2 tag. You can just say that, hey, this is version 1 and this is version 2. And then you can run version 1 and version 2 at the same time for a couple of months. And then you can just publish your mobile application. And after you make sure that everybody goes to version 2, you can just kill the version 1. And also, while doing the URL paths, like having this like version 1 users and the other parameters is a really good practice. For example, let's say that we have a service and we want to get the list of the teams. So if I run a request like this, if I say teams, this API will respond me the all of the teams available. And let's imagine that there's a one page, you will see the teams, or you will see the cars, or you will see the users. And there's some basic information, the team name, team email address, maybe profile picture. But when you click the detail, you just get the like all the documents this team submitted or all of the orders these teams give. But you don't want to load everything in one API request, right? Because otherwise, since the request will super heavy, it will be not easy for client to operate, or your web page will be start slowly. So if you can add a team ID after you're clicking the detail page, you can run this request again, and you can say that, hey, I want this team, and then the response of this request will be detailed object of the team. And when you want to get the documents of the team, you can just say that, hey, give me a documents. So you can just use these objects in a nested way. And also, if you want to just see the one of the documents, you can just put a document ID. And in this way, you can just see the one team's documents in nested way. And this will be super quick response time. And also, please don't do this because this is not good way for many reasons. If you do this, it will still work, but it will really nightmare for the developers who has to be use that. Like the front end guys, the mobile guys, they will hate you. So don't do this. And like doing the URLs like this, like show me the username, or like a create a user, and like using all of the post requests. If you want to create a user, just say users and get this information from the body. Or if you want to delete users, just use the corresponding HTTP method, like this one. If you want to create users, just say the post the user. If you want to update the user, just use the put and use the corresponding method like version 1, users, and the user ID. or if you want to delete them, it's the same way. If you want to see the details of one, it's the same way. And if you want a list, you can just say users and get the list. If you do like this, the front-end developer has to always look your documents and figure out like what is what. And also when you're organizing or when you're writing code or when you're maintaining code, it will be a nightmare. And also one more good practice is using the headers. So there's a many different type of headers, but the headers generally, you have to say something to backend. And like this can be an API key, or this can be, hey, my accepted language is English. So respond me in English, or respond me in Korean, or respond me in different char sets. And also you can get the content type from here as well. For example, most of like 99% of the new web APIs using JSON, but there's some old web APIs which using XML. So if you're working with a bank, or if you're working with a really, really old company, they may ask you that, hey, please respond us in XML, not a JSON. And some of our clients can say that, hey, respond as JSON. So for make your company profit, you have to sometimes serve the bot, and you can just ask the clients that select the content type. So yeah, unfortunately, I passed 2 minutes to my time. But if you have questions, I think we still have time, right? He's sleeping.
Sorry.
Yeah. Questions? Or do we have a time for questions?
I have a question. Some websites, in Dragon, some websites, we cannot read the API directly. It is kind of hashed, or it is important to hash API URL and its data.
Well, it's depend of your situation, but some of people do, some of people not do. As a security perspective, I think like some of your APIs can be public, but you just send the tokens and get information exchange of these tokens. If you do like this, I don't see any problems.
For example, Google or Discord directly opening the network
Yeah.
console, still we cannot read the actual what's going on there. So it kind of, are there kind of methods for it?
Yeah.
Test it, right?
Yeah, they may because of some other reasons as well. Because sometimes sending the data itself cannot be economically profitable. So sometimes when you are sending data, you can just encrypt with base 64, or you can just change the type of the data because your front end want in that way. So there, I think this is not related to a security perspective. So this really depends on situation.
It could also be, they may not necessarily be REST APIs.
Yes.
They may be gRPC is a popular format. RPC is another type of API design, and then gRPC is Google's kind of binary RPC format. RPC is just short for remote procedure call. It's just a different method of API design, but that lends itself well to exchanging binary data instead of human readable messages. Whereas REST, it usually just makes more sense to send you human readable stuff. So there's a whole bunch of different reasons they could choose a different API design and then a binary format instead of a human readable format. It could be security. It could be that they want their API to be closed and not be used by non-official clients. Because one of the reasons to build an API is so that you can have many types of clients to support it. You can have web clients, mobile clients, whatever. People can make their own clients. There's a whole bunch of reasons for things think to do it that way. So without talking to someone at Google or Discord, it's hard to really know why.
If you can like use role-based access control or relation-based access control stuff. If you don't want to use like other users, like I mean, for example, you have like admin users and you don't want to get access like.
I mean, we can use like role-based or relation-based access. So
Yep.
It's not it's just such some APIs which you don't want to use your base users then. So your only admins or like privileged users can access to that kind of APIs. So you can do with that.
Even if your APIs is running in a closed room without network access, we are recommending to do this kind of authorization methods like role-based. And because like even you hide your APIs, it's best practice to do that. There's a question over there, I think.
So in one of your slides, you listed a bunch of instructions like get, post, and put, and like I don't remember what they all were, but like what's the difference between put, post, update, I don't remember them, but like can you like say what those?
This one's?
Yeah, what's the difference between put and post and patch?
So post, when we create a new data, when we submit a new data, we usually use post. But when we are updating a data, the object itself, we using put. But if we are updating some small section of an object, we use patch. Post and the others is actually really different, but put and patch is usually people don't understand or people say thinks that this is the same. But imagine that you have a table in the database, and this table is a huge table. You have 100 different columns, and when you show this information, there's a like 100 different data, but you only want to change one single property. If you just send this property and not send the others, you may say that, hey, I want to delete these properties. Or you just try to say that, no, I just don't want to touch them. So there's a difference. And in the backend, you cannot understand without seeing the whole objects. So if I'm sending a put request, I have to send the whole object, whole 100 columns at the same time. But if I want to just change a single line, I can just say that, hey, I will change this line, and this is the data. And in the page, I will just only change one line. So we can say that change is a more optimized way to update the data. Maybe you want to add something?
Yeah, there's still delete head options.
What?
So delete is to delete a resource.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
one's pretty obvious. And then get kind of has two usages. You can use get to either get like a listing of objects or get to get a single object. And that depends more on the path. I think Emma described that earlier. But then options, that's a cores thing, among other stuff that is best looked up on your own time.
Yeah.
And then head is the same. That's probably something you want to look up on your own time. But get, post, put, patch, delete, those are the most common ones you'll use. But yeah, I'm ready to describe those.
Yeah, by the way, usually most of the systems actually not use patch. So it's actually not common. Actually, yes, of course it is common, but usually it is not easy to implement. So that's why usually most of the systems say, hey, give me the whole object. So they just combine with a get call and put call together and use that way.
Does that answer your question?
I have like a strange quick question. So basically, can we do all this stuff which you mentioned, with only get and post, like get for using and post for editing or creating our stuff. And so, but it will like will be like opposite opinion to your like after you say it, like you need to keep clean the API and stuff, right?
Yeah. Like technically, you can do everything with only a get or post as well, but it will not be clean development. And for example, if you have some kind of third-party system which records your requests and give you a monitoring call like this, also you cannot catch the most of the information. So that's why it's best practice to use corresponding them. Any questions? Okay, I think it's done. Just I want to remind you something. If you are planning to join the Terraform and Azure Kubernetes, you have to have your own Azure accounts. I think we add some description in Discord channel, so don't forget them. Welcome.